Yugi Bros!
Sup my Yugi Bros, it's Connor. Little disclaimer before we start the video. The giveaways from now on are going to be on a video by video basis rather than a weekly basis. That means each video, assuming it has a giveaway question, will have its own giveaway. This video's giveaway items are 2 packs of Scars of Battle. All you have to do to enter said giveaway is like this video, subscribe to the channel, if you haven't already of course, and lastly, answer my giveaway question that I will randomly place somewhere during this video. All giveaway winners' names will be announced the following week in my new weekly video segment called Yugi Slows. But with that out of the way, now back to your regularly scheduled content. What's up Yugi Bros, it's Connor with another top 5 video. We're going to go off my top 5 favorite / most important cards from Match of the Millennium. Most of these are meta relevant, 1 or 2 of them is more of a tech choice in my opinion, but in my opinion, nonetheless. There is always a conversation to be had. I understand not all of you will agree with my choices, but that is what makes it my opinion. Starting at number 5 is none other than Didi Crow. Now I know most of you know what this card does, but for the people that don't, it is a quick effect that you can activate from your hand. You can discard this card to the graveyard, then target one card in your opponent's graveyard and banish that target. Now, this card has been relevant in regular Yu-Gi-Oh! For years and years. Speed Duels, not as much yet, however, it still does see play here and there, and obviously I think it'll be a force to be reckoned with to come in the future. But right now it has many applications that a lot of people actually don't use it for. A big one is Relinquished. If they're going to, let's say, use Black Illusion Ritual to summon the Relinquished, and they don't have a monster on the field, normally they'd then have to tribute something from the hand. However, if they have like Sphere Karibo or the Jin in Graveyard, they can tribute that as the entire tribute. If they have one of those in grave and you Didi Crow it, their spell has to resolve by tributing something from their hand. And if they don't have anything, then it just fizzles out. But if they do, then they're forced to waste something that they otherwise normally wouldn't have to waste. And that's really strong in that type of situation. Another way this card is relevant in general is if your opponent uses Jar of Avarice and targets 5 cards in their grave to shuffle into their deck. If you banish just one of them, the card does not resolve. So that is another beautiful use of Didi Crow. If your opponent is playing Skill Successor and tries to use the Graveyard effect, or is going to use the grave, you can banish it beforehand. You can banish the Skull Servant to make King of the Skull Servants weaker, or just King of the Skull Servants outright. You can banish a Sea Serpent that they're trying to bring back off their slushies in the grave. This card has a lot of applications and will definitely be more relevant in the future. I definitely see it being more relevant than it currently is. And that's why it has the number 5 slot on this list. My number 4 is a bit of a dark horse. It's Illusionist Faceless Magician. This card says, if a face-up Eyes Restrict, Fusion Monster, or Relinquished you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from the graveyard if it was there when that monster was destroyed, or from the hand even if not. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target one Eyes Restrict, Fusion Monster, or Relinquished in your grave, special summon it. You can use each of the effects of Illusionist Faceless Mage once per turn. This card creates a bit of a loop in Relinquished, and I think is really strong moving forward. So basically, if you're Relinquished, or your Thousand Eyes Restrict in this situation, is destroyed by battle or card effect, just by anything, but basically, you could special summon this card from the hand or graveyard, and then when this card leaves the field and is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon that monster back, essentially. So it creates a bit of a loop where you can get back your Relinquishes over and over again, or your Thousand Eyes Restrict, any way you want. But what I like about this card as well is that it's 2200 defense, so it's a nice wall for Relinquish that Relinquish never really had before. But when your opponent finally gets rid of it, you can bring back your Relinquished or your Thousand Eyes Restrict, and essentially, if it's in Restrict's case, then your opponent can't attack, which is, a whole different myriad of problems. If it's Relinquished, as long as you can protect that Relinquished, you can then absorb the monster that destroyed this, essentially, the following turn. This also acts as a nice tribute from the hand to summon Relinquished without, wasting your Sonic Birds and Senjus. So, This card does a lot for Relinquished that I feel is very, is just an untapped potential. And it's not to say that no one uses the card. I have seen it in a lot of tournaments recently. But I do think it's worth mentioning still. And that's why it has my number 4 slot. My number 3 spot is a trap card, and it's called... That's right, it's not Skill Successor. It's actually Eliminating the League. Got you guys there. As much as I would love to put Skill Successor on this list, I don't feel it actually covers enough of the meta. It's an interesting, quirky card, but I don't think it actually deserves my top 5 slots. Eliminating the League, however, is a card that I feel is heavily underrated and still doesn't get much play. Even I haven't actually used it that much. But for the people that don't know, it is a normal trap that says discard 1 spell card, then target one face-up monster your opponent controls. Destroy that target, then look at your opponent's hand and send all cards in their hand with the same name as the destroyed card to the graveyard. Now, the only reason I feel like this card doesn't see nearly as much play as it could is because Offerings to the Doomed was released in the same thing. Not this deck, but the other deck, they both come in the same box. So I feel like it's just overshadowed this card completely. And the fact that you have to discard a spell card makes this card a little bit harder, but this card will see the light of day eventually because it gets rid of all other copies in your opponent's hand. And it gives you free information on your opponent's hand, which also can be really crucial depending on the situation that you're in. So I definitely think this card will be good in spurts. I think it's more like a side-specific, format-specific card than anything else, and Offerings to the Doomed is more of a generic option. But I do think this card will definitely see its time. It just depends on when. I think it's actually decent. You know how people for a while were playing the Forceful Checkpoint against decks that have a lot of monsters in the hand or whatever? This kind of fits the same build, assuming you know your opponent's playing multiple of the same card, and there's a very good potential that they would have that same card in their hand as well as the one that you destroyed on the field. So that's why this card is my number 3. At number 2, I have a card that I feel is really, really strong right now, and that is Spell Shattering Arrow. Now, over time, we might get more Spell and Trap Destruction removal cards that, will be more prevalent than this. However, this will stay as a format-specific card, and I think this card is still really good against a lot of decks currently. For those that don't know, this is a quick play spell card that says destroy as many face-up spell cards your opponent controls as possible, and if you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each. First off, the burn damage can be relevant in 4000 Yu-Gi-Oh! Second off, you can hit them for a max of 2000, because if they have 3 face-up continuous spells and a field spell, that's 4 options right there. Third off, this actually can be chained directly to an opponent using a spell card, even if it's not continuous. If you need that 500 to burn them for game, you can actually use this, and it will work in that situation. But above all else, destroying multiple face-up spell cards right now is pretty good, especially against the right decks. If you played this against Amazon, which I understand doesn't see a whole lot of play, but it would get rid of their heirloom and their village potentially all at one shot and do 1000 damage to them. You can get rid of equip spells or something that's treated as an equip spell, like aka Blast Sphere, for example. This also gets rid of Mask of the Accursed against Burn, which is really strong. If people are playing Supply Squad, it can get rid of that as well, along with many other options that currently exist in Speed. So I think Spell Shattering Arrow will be a side deck card for a long time. Counterpart only to Twister, really, or Double Cyclone Wild Tornado if people are playing that package. But I do think this card has its own spot because it does that extra burn damage, and that is why it is my number 2 on my list here. And my number 1 is Charging Gaia the Fierce Knight. This is a level 7 effect monster, 2300 attack, 2100 defense that says you can normal summon this card without tributing. If this card is normal summoned without tributing, its original attack becomes 1900. If this card is tributed, you can add 1 Blackluster Soldier monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Charging Gaia the Fierce Knight once per turn. Speed Duels has been very slow on the power creep and attack points so far. 1800 was actually pretty steep for a bit. Recently we've had Gilgarth, we have Zoma the Spirit in the form of a trap monster, and I believe we have Gear Free the Iron Knight still. I might be missing one or two, but no 1900s outside of Toon Gemini Elf have been released yet into Speed Duels, and yet here comes this card that could be a 2 tribute that works with its own skill, Knight of Legend, but also can be a normal summonable monster at 1900, and oh by the way, keeps the 2100 defense if it does get switched to defense mode. That's crazy for Speed Duels. I'm not saying that's power creep, but that's definitely strong, especially in a game that has been so slow on leveling up, so to speak, its attack points in its monsters. Oh, by the way, also if this card is tributed, you can add a Blackluster Soldier monster from your deck to your hand. Currently, we only have the Ritual monster, but that can be relevant depending on the deck if you know that's your focus. But in the future, if we get more BLS monsters, this card could get really, really good. So, I'm not saying it's overpowered. It's definitely not overpowered. But if you throw this in a warrior deck already, forget its own deck with Knight of Legend, which is its own gimmick and actually is pretty good in there as it is. Throw this into a regular like Blade Turbo deck where you have this and Command Knight now. So this becomes 1900, but with Command Knight it goes back to its 2300 when you summon it, normal summon it, and you have to attack this before you attack Command Knight. I don't know. I think it had a lot. Like if you were to put me at a round table and tell me the cards that we think should come in the next set of Speed Duels, and you pitched me this card, I'd say not yet. This is a little too good. Maybe a set or two later, and we'll release it. But no, they were just like, go right ahead, take this card, throw it into the mix, see what it does, and go from there. And I don't know, I just think this card is strong. Like until we get more 1900 beat sticks, anyone that just wants to play like beatstick.deck, throw 3 of these in your deck, and you're smooth sailing. Like this is a really strong card that has a lot of synergy with stuff, especially because Warriors itself has a lot of support in speed. I don't know. But guys, what do you think? It's always a conversation, like I said in the beginning of the video. Leave your comments down below. I want to know what you guys think are in your top 5. I know the last top 5 video I made, I said it was the most competitively relevant stuff, and then I had Supply Squad in there instead of Nightmare Wheel, and we had a discussion about that. And yeah, I tend to realize that it was more my opinion, my top 5 opinion cards rather than what the meta has. So that's why I prefaced in this video that these are more my opinions than consistently meta cards. However, some of these are meta cards. But I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. As always, also comment, like, and subscribe. Click that notification bell to get all of our latest updates. And guys, I'm out.